When Ethan slid the forged will in front of me, claiming it was all sorted out, I realized my children weren't just grieving, they were planning to erase everything Thomas and I had built. At 68, I find myself sitting by the window watching the seasons change, just as they did when I was younger. I'm Anna Thomas, though. For most of my life, I was Anna Bellamy. I've lived through decades of memories, with the love of my life, Thomas, by my side. It's funny how life moves, how it shifts, how everything seems so vivid at certain moments. I find myself looking back at the simplest of things, like knitting blankets in the quiet of the evening, or arranging flowers in the kitchen window, small tasks, but they held so much meaning to both Thomas and me. Thomas and I shared a life rooted in tradition. He had a way of making every moment feel important, from the evenings spent reading together in front of the fire to the quiet mornings where we'd walk hand in hand through the garden. It wasn't just about the big moments. It was about the small, everyday things that built the fabric of our life. But life has a way of catching you off guard. Thomas was a strong man, one who faced heart disease, with the same quiet resilience he had shown throughout his life. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, the kind of illness that wears you down piece by piece. He fought it with everything he had, but there comes a point where the body can no longer keep up with the will. He made me promise not to tell our children, Ethan and Sophie, about the full extent of his illness. Let them live their lives. He'd say, his voice softer than usual, as he lay in bed. He wanted them to keep moving forward, to continue chasing their dreams without the shadow of his sickness hanging over them. So I kept my promise. I shielded them from the reality of what was happening. Let them live without the burden of knowing. Let them have their lives untouched by his suffering. And I carried the weight alone. As I sat there reminiscing about the life Thomas and I had built together, I couldn't help but reflect on how things had changed. The world had shifted beneath my feet, but one thing remained the same: the house, our home, the farm, the orchards. Everything was still here, holding memories of love, hard work, and the life Thomas and I had dedicated ourselves to. But as I look back now, I see how disconnected my children had become during Thomas's final months, how the distance between us had only grown wider with time. Ethan, my eldest, had long since moved to the city. He had always dreamed of a high-powered career, and I supported that dream even if it meant he was rarely home. In his early 20s, Ethan couldn't wait to get away from the farm, from Millfield. The smell of the orchards, the sound of the tractors in the fields, the dirt beneath his boots, it all felt like a weight on his shoulders. He was more interested in the fast-paced life of the city, surrounded by glass towers, and the promises of success. The farm, the land, it was just a place where he had to live while chasing his dreams. He never saw it as the heartbeat of our family, and Sophie, my youngest, had always been the dreamer. She went from one failed business to another, each venture more extravagant than the last. 5 wellness businesses in 8 years, all funded by her father, all abandoned when the reality of hard work set in. She called frequently, asking for more money, more support. But when I needed her most, when her father was fighting for his life, Sophie was absent. It wasn't that she didn't care, or that she wasn't capable of feeling for her father's suffering. It was just that she was consumed by her own failures, her own desire to live a life beyond the small town, beyond the farm. When Thomas passed, I had expected the usual outpouring of grief, the comfort of having my children by my side to help me navigate the difficult days ahead. But what I got instead was a cold practicality that cut through my sorrow like a knife. The day after the funeral, as we stood together in the kitchen, I realized that something had shifted in them. It wasn't just the loss of their father that changed the dynamic, it was their sudden interest in what came after, in what Thomas had left behind. I had planned a small, quiet funeral, just as Thomas would have wanted it. We buried him on the hillside, overlooking the orchards he had worked so hard to cultivate. As the pastor spoke the final words, I stood there numb, surrounded by family, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. The house, once filled with laughter and the sounds of busy farm life, now felt hollow, as if the very air in the room was filled with tension. Ethan, who had never been one for displays of emotion, placed his arm around me, but his grip was stiff, almost mechanical. Sophie, on the other hand, cried openly into a handkerchief I had never seen before, her sobs breaking the quiet. It was after the funeral when the real surprise came. Ethan, who had barely acknowledged the farm in recent years, was the first to speak. "Mom," he began, his voice carrying an edge, "I hadn't heard before you and Dad have done a lot for this place, but have you thought about what's next? I mean, the business has to be tough to manage on your own. Maybe it's time to downsize." The words hit me like a cold wave. Downsizing. Sell the farm. It was as though the land itself, the legacy that had been passed down through generations, had lost its meaning in their eyes. The business wasn't just a collection of trees, buildings, and fields. It was the heart of our family. It was what had kept us grounded, what had brought us together through thick and thin. "I think it's time to sell, Mom." Ethan continued, his eyes meeting mine, but not really seeing me. "There's a lot of potential in the land, and it could be a fresh start for all of us." His words were slick, polished, as if they had been rehearsed. This wasn't a conversation about honoring my husband's memory or carrying forward the family's legacy. This was about profit, about getting what they felt they were entitled to. Sophie, who had arrived a few days later with her usual entourage of designer bags and an air of forced optimism, was quick to jump on Ethan's side. "It's not like you're getting any younger, Mom," she said, scrolling through her phone, as if the conversation was nothing more than an inconvenience. "The upkeep on this place, it's a lot. You could be living in a retirement community surrounded by people your age doing something for yourself. You deserve it." I felt my heart tighten as I listened to her words. It wasn't just that they wanted to sell the farm. It was that they saw me as a burden. They saw their father's work as something to be discarded, something to be sold off for quick money. "How about we just get the business appraised?" Ethan suggested, his voice rising with urgency. "We could put this all behind us, make the transition easier for you, Mom." I stared at him, trying to process the words that were coming from his mouth. This was the same boy who had spent years distancing himself from everything this farm stood for, and now suddenly he was an expert in managing it. In his eyes, the farm was just a commodity, a way to get ahead. It didn't matter how many families had depended on our orchards for work, or how many local farmers we had helped during hard times. It didn't matter that we had built this from the ground up. All that mattered was what he could get from it. Sophie, still glued to her phone, piped up. "There's a developer interested in the land," she said casually, as though she were discussing a new pair of shoes. "They'll pay $7 million for it. $7 million, Mom. Think of all the things we could do with that money. It could solve so many of our problems." I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could be so blind, how she could care so little for what her father had worked for what I had worked for. This land wasn't just about money, it was about family, about history, about something far greater than any developer's dream of luxury homes for weekenders. But I didn't scream. Instead, I stood there silently absorbing the betrayal that was being thrust upon me, knowing that my children had already made up their minds. I had always believed that my love for them was enough to guide them enough to help them see the value in the life we had created together. But now, standing in that kitchen, I realized that I had been wrong. The love I had given them, the sacrifices I had made, had been taken for granted. What happened next was inevitable. Ethan and Sophie's plan had been set into motion long before Thomas's death, and now they were determined to carry it through, to wipe away everything we had built in the pursuit of their own desires. They didn't care about the memories, the history, the legacy. All they saw was an opportunity to move on, to cash in, to get away from this small town and start over. And as I stood there surrounded by the ruins of what was once my family's bond, I realized something. I was not going to let them take it all. I was not going to let them destroy everything that Thomas and I had built, not without a fight. I looked at them, each one caught up in their own world of self-interest, and I made a decision. The farm, our legacy, was not theirs to sell. It was mine to protect, and I would do whatever it took to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. I had known deep down that something wasn't right. There had always been that quiet whisper at the back of my mind, telling me that things had changed between us, between me and my children. But even with the sadness that hung over me after Thomas's passing, I tried to ignore it. I wanted to hold on to the hope that they were grieving just as I was, that they would remember the life we had built together and come home not just to mourn, but to support each other. But as the days went on, that hope started to fade, and the truth began to reveal itself in ways I couldn't ignore. It wasn't long before the real shock came. I was sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by the quiet of the house, the same table where Thomas and I had shared countless meals, when Ethan slid a piece of paper in front of me. He was trying to be calm, trying to sound reasonable, but his words struck me like a slap in the face. "Mom, we've already talked about this," he said, his voice low but firm. "The will. It's all sorted out." I looked at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying, trying to connect the dots. But as I glanced down at the paper, I saw it, the document that had never been part of my husband's intentions. The paper that had been drafted after Thomas had been bedridden, drugged by morphine, barely conscious enough to speak. It was the will. The one my son had presented as if it were nothing more than a simple formality, a legal document that had somehow been signed by Thomas in his weakest moments. My heart stopped for a moment. The signature, it looked so perfect, too perfect for a man who had spent the last months of his life struggling with pain. It didn't look like his. It didn't feel like his. I could tell anyone who had known him well could tell that this was not his handwriting. And yet there it was, in black and white, stating that the estate and the farm, everything we had worked for, was to be handed over to Ethan and Sophie. But it didn't end there. The will also included a clause, one that neither of my children had mentioned before the farm was to be sold to a developer for a luxury housing project. A developer, a luxury estate. The thought made my blood run cold. It was as if all that Thomas and I had built, all the sacrifices we had made, all the late nights in the orchards, the long hours managing the farm had meant nothing. To them, it was just land, a piece of property to be sold to the highest bidder, a chance to cash in on a dream that had never belonged to us. I stared at Ethan, my chest tightening. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to acknowledge the depth of their betrayal, but the evidence was there right in front of me. Ethan didn't answer at first. He just looked down, his eyes avoiding mine. But then he said something that made my blood boil. "Mom, it's for the best. You've always said we should make sure the farm stays in good hands. This developer is offering $7 million. $7 million, Mom. Think about it. We can start fresh. You can finally live the life you deserve without worrying about the farm anymore. $7 million. The number echoed in my mind, but it didn't sound like a solution. It sounded like a bribe, a way for them to wash their hands of all the work we had put into this farm, into our lives. They weren't thinking about the legacy we had created, about the way Thomas had fought for every inch of that land. They were thinking about money. And the farm, our life's work, was nothing more than a means to an end for them. But it wasn't just Ethan. Sophie, too, had become part of this plan. She hadn't been involved much in the farm before, but now she was suddenly interested. She was suddenly there, her eyes wide with excitement as she spoke about the future. "Think about it, Mom," she said, practically glowing. "The farm could be turned into a gated community with luxury homes. You could sell the property, move into a nice retirement community, and finally be at peace. No more worrying about the land, no more work. Just a new beginning." Her words felt like a slap to my face. Peace. A new beginning. This wasn't about peace. It was about greed. It was about using their father's death as a way to get what they wanted. It wasn't about honoring Thomas's memory. It wasn't about continuing the work he had spent his life building. It was about selling it all off for quick cash. And then came the most painful part, the part that hurt more than anything they could ever say. They didn't even try to hide it. They didn't even pretend to care about what I thought or felt. "You should move to Sunny Pines," Mom Ethan said, his voice taking on that same calculated tone. "It's a beautiful retirement community. There are activities to pull people your age. You'll be happy there. A retirement community." The words sounded foreign to me. I had never once considered leaving the farm. It was my home, my life, the place where I had raised my children, where I had spent every day with Thomas working side by side. But to them, it was just a place to be sold off, a place for me to leave so they could get on with their plans. I felt a sudden rage rise within me, something fierce and primal. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice strong, despite the tears threatening to rise. "This is my home, and it's not for sale. You can't just sell everything we've worked for because it's convenient for you." But they didn't listen. They never had. Sophie and Ethan exchanged a look, the kind of look that spoke volumes, and I knew then what was happening. They had already made up their minds. They had already decided. The farm was no longer a part of our family. It was something to be disposed of, something to be discarded. I sat there in stunned silence for a moment, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. They were treating me like an obstacle, a problem to be solved. They didn't care about the land, about the farm, about what it meant to our family. All they cared about was money. And the worst part, they thought they had won. But they hadn't. Not yet. I stood up slowly, deliberately. My legs felt like they might give way beneath me, but I didn't let them see my weakness. I walked past them, feeling like a stranger in my own home, and headed upstairs to the room Thomas and I had shared. The room still smelled faintly of him, of his favorite cologne of the long years we had spent together. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them take it from me. They wanted to sell the farm, to erase everything we had built, but they had no idea what they were up against. I would protect this farm. I would protect Thomas's legacy. And I would do whatever it took to keep my family's history from being sold to the highest bidder. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the bed Thomas and I had shared for more than 4 decades, staring at the wooden ceiling we'd once painted together. Every creak in the floorboards below reminded me that my children, my own flesh and blood, were still in the house, perhaps even now finalizing their plans to erase everything Thomas and I had built. I kept replaying the past few days in my head, the phony will, the push for the retirement home, their smug certainty that I would just quietly go along with their scheme. Maybe they thought grief had made me weak. Maybe they assumed age had made me docile. But they had forgotten one thing: this farm was my life's work too, and I wasn't going to surrender it without a fight. At first light, I got out of bed, moving quietly through the house. The air was still heavy with the scent of the orchard blossoms outside and the bitter undertone of betrayal inside. I walked into the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. Hidden behind a false panel Thomas had installed years ago, back when we worried more about raccoons than lawyers, were my passport, birth certificate, and an envelope of emergency cash. I dressed in silence, slipped my ID and documents into my purse, and made my way to the closet. Behind Thomas's row of flannel shirts, I pulled down a small fireproof box. Inside was the original deed to 20 acres of land purchased in my maiden name, Anna Bellamy, before we married. Land Thomas and I had never folded into the full business portfolio. He used to call it insurance. I used to call it sentimental. Today, it was salvation. Downstairs, they were already awake. I could hear the clink of Ethan's coffee mug on the counter and Sophie's high-pitched laugh, artificial as ever. They were probably going to try again, push harder, maybe hand me another glossy brochure for Sunny Pines. I didn't give them the chance. "I'm going out," I said, breezing through the kitchen without waiting for their response. "I need some air." Ethan started to follow me. "Do you want me to drive?" I said. "I need air." I cut him off more sharply than I intended. His eyebrows twitched, surprised, but he said nothing more. And just like that, I walked out the door and kept walking. Past the barn, past the fence line Thomas repaired every spring, past the boundary stone carved with our initials. I didn't stop until the Canton house was out of sight and my legs ached beneath me. The road to Milford Village stretched ahead, quiet and cracked, flanked by trees that had watched me age over the years. It took nearly 2 hours to walk into town. My funeral flats weren't made for country roads, but I didn't care. With every blister, every step, I felt my resolve harden. At the edge of town stood Miller's General Store. It had been there forever longer than me, longer than Thomas, and Ray Miller, bless him, looked up from his counter with wide eyes as I stepped inside. "Nana, you okay? You look a little... Well, you look like you've had a morning." I forced a smile. "It's been a long few weeks, Ray. Could I use your phone?" "Of course," he said, stepping aside without hesitation. "You take your time." Behind the counter in the cramped office, where Thomas and I had once filled out crop order forms, I dialed the only person I trusted, James Carrington, our family lawyer of more than 30 years. "Anna," he answered, breathless. "I've been trying to reach you for days. I wasn't at the will reading. Something felt off." "It was off," I said firmly. "James, they forged it. Ethan and Sophie. They're trying to sell everything to a developer, and they think I'll just vanish." James was silent for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. "Where are you now, Miller's store? In town? Don't move. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When he arrived, we didn't waste time. Over coffee and an uneaten sandwich, I laid it all out: the suspicious will, the pressure to move out the retirement home, and most importantly, the original deed to those 20 acres, the most valuable part of the farm. "They don't know about this?" he asked, holding the deed with care. "Not a clue," I said, "and I want to keep it that way." James gave a grim nod. "Then we move now. First, I'll file an emergency injunction to block the sale of the property. That will give us time. And second, we freeze the business bank accounts until we determine what's been touched." "What about the developer?" I asked. "We'll get their name through property inquiry," he said, already scribbling notes. "If they've already signed a purchase agreement based on a forged will, that's fraud. We'll rope in the DA if we have to." He looked up at me then. "Anna, are you ready for this? It's going to get messy." I took a breath. I've cleaned barns with a shovel and a bucket. Messy doesn't scare me. By that afternoon, James had filed the injunction in the county court. The bank froze all associated accounts after James presented the evidence of irregularities. And just like that, the train my children had set in motion screeched to a halt. I returned to the village and checked into the Rose Hill bed and breakfast. The owner, an old friend from Quilting Club, didn't ask questions. She just handed me a room key and squeezed my hand. "Whatever this is, I'm glad you're here." That night, I made calls to Harold at the bank, to Lisa Adams at the Agricultural Board, and finally to Sarah Quinn, editor of the local newspaper. By morning, the web was in motion. The truth was a freight train, and it was barreling toward Ethan and Sophie whether they were ready or not. At 10 a.m., James called me with news the court had granted a temporary freeze on all property transfers related to Canton Farm, pending verification of the will. The developer, an LLC out of Philadelphia called Hollow Ridge Ventures, was also being contacted for records and correspondence. And then at exactly 12:16 p.m., my prepaid phone rang. Mom Ethan's voice was sharp, already angry. "What have you done?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Just protecting what's mine." "You can't do this, I already have. You're sabotaging everything." "No," I said, cutting him off. "You did that the moment you forged your father's signature." The line went quiet. I could hear the fear settling in his breath. "You think you can just freeze accounts and throw around accusations?" he snapped. "I don't think," I said, coolly. "I know." Then Sophie's voice cut in. "Mom, we were just trying to help." "Save it," I said. "You have 24 hours to withdraw that forged will sign everything back to me and walk away with your dignity. Otherwise, I file criminal charges: fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy, you name it." "You wouldn't do that," Ethan hissed. "The woman you left on the side of the road wouldn't," I said. "But the one on this phone, she will." And I meant every word. It wasn't long after the phone call that the weight of the situation started to sink in. Ethan and Sophie hadn't taken me seriously. They thought I was just an old woman grieving her husband with no real understanding of the business or the law. They thought I was someone they could push aside, someone who could be manipulated just like they had with Thomas in his final months. But I was far from that. I knew what they were doing. They had a plan to take everything, the farm, the house, the legacy, and turn it into money. To them, the land wasn't a symbol of hard work, history, and memories. It was a commodity, a piece of property to be sold for profit, and I wasn't going to let them succeed. The days following the injunction were a blur. I spent every waking moment organizing, making calls, and coordinating with James, my lawyer. I reached out to everyone who might help, people from the local agricultural board, neighbors who had known us for years, and even friends from the town who had worked with Thomas. Together we began to build a case piece by piece. James was relentless, his every action calculated to unravel the web Ethan and Sophie had spun. The injunction had bought us time, but now the real work began. I spent hours combing through old contracts, land deeds, and business records. The farm wasn't just a piece of land to me, it was my life, my husband's life, and the lives of generations before us. And no one, least of all my own children, was going to take that from me without a fight. We uncovered more evidence of the fraud. Ethan had been in contact with the developers long before Thomas passed, making arrangements for the sale of the farm. Sophie, as usual, had been asking for money under the guise of business investments, but now it was clear she had been playing her cards with a different hand altogether. She had lied to me, manipulated me, and she had used her father's illness as an excuse to get what she wanted. They thought I wouldn't fight back, but they were wrong. James worked tirelessly, filing the necessary motions and compiling evidence. We reached out to the developer Hollow Ridge Ventures, demanding their records of communication with Ethan and Sophie. At first they denied everything, but the more we dug, the more we uncovered. There were emails, contracts, and even meeting notes where Ethan and Sophie had discussed selling the farm long before Thomas died. It was all right there in black and white. It was as if they thought they could get away with it because they assumed no one would be looking. But I was looking, and so was James. In the meantime, my children continued to press. They thought they could force me into submission by leveraging their position, using guilt and pressure to get me to comply. They didn't understand that I wasn't the woman I had been years ago, the woman who had bent to their demands, who had kept the peace for the sake of family. That woman had died with Thomas. The woman standing before them now was someone else, someone stronger, someone who had nothing left to lose. It was Ethan who called next, and his tone had shifted. There was no more anger, no more arrogance. Now there was fear. "Mom," he began, his voice shaking, "we need to talk. This isn't going the way we planned." "No," I said firmly. "This isn't going the way you planned, but it's going the way I planned, and that's what matters." "We're not backing down," Ethan said, his voice tight. "You have no idea what you're doing. We've already contacted a real estate agent. There's no stopping this now." "I'll stop it," I replied, my voice steady, unyielding. "I'm freezing the accounts, and you're going to have to answer to the authorities for what you've done. The will was a fraud. You manipulated your father at his most vulnerable, and now you're going to face the consequences of that." There was silence on the other end of the line. For a long moment, I could hear nothing but his breath, ragged and uncertain. "You don't have to do this, Mom," he finally said, his voice breaking. "You don't have to take it this far." "I already have," I said. "I've spent my whole life protecting this family, this farm. But you're not family anymore, Ethan. You're someone who thought they could destroy everything your father and I worked for." I ended the call before he could respond. There was nothing left to say. The next few days were a whirlwind. The legal documents continued to pile up. Each piece of evidence we uncovered brought us closer to the truth, and the closer we got, the more desperate Ethan and Sophie became. They had no idea that I had already called in the cavalry. Vincent, our family's longtime lawyer, had made sure that everything was being documented. The fraud would not stand. I wasn't naive. I knew this battle wasn't going to be easy. Ethan and Sophie had a lot of resources at their disposal. They could hire the best lawyers, the best public relations experts. But I had something they didn't have: the truth, and the truth was a powerful weapon. Soon it was time for the meeting. James Vincent and I sat in the small office in town, preparing for what was about to unfold. I knew my children would come. I knew they would walk through that door with their heads high, their guilt buried beneath layers of pride. But they were going to find out that I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The meeting was set for the following afternoon. Ethan and Sophie arrived, their faces drawn and tired, the weight of their own lies pressing down on them. They didn't know it yet, but they were already losing. When they walked into the office, they didn't even look at me. They sat down, their faces tight with anger and resentment, but underneath it there was fear. Fear of the inevitable. Mom Sophie said, her voice shaky, "This is ridiculous. You're ruining everything." "I'm not ruining anything," I said, calmly locking eyes with her. "I'm protecting what's mine and what's right." Ethan glanced at her, his jaw clenched. "We won't sign anything. You can't make us. I don't need you to sign anything I said. I already know what you've done. I already have the evidence. The will is a fraud, and you're both going to face the consequences of your actions." Sophie's face paled, and Ethan's eyes shifted nervously. It was clear they hadn't expected things to turn out this way. They thought they could walk in, throw around a few threats, and I'd cave. But I wasn't the same woman who had raised them. That woman was gone. In her place was a woman who knew exactly what she had to do. "I'm offering you a way out," I continued, my voice steady. "You can step away now, withdraw your claims, and I won't press charges for fraud or elder abuse. I'll even offer you both a one-time payment of $50,000, and we can go our separate ways. But once you've crossed that line, once you've refused my offer, there's no turning back." They didn't respond immediately. There was a long, tense silence, and then Ethan spoke. "You're insane," he said, his voice cracking. "You really think we'll just walk away?" "I think you will," I said softly, "because you know you've already lost." At that moment, I saw it in their eyes, the realization that they had underestimated me. And just like that, their resistance began to crumble. The days following the meeting were a blur of emotions. Ethan and Sophie's refusal to acknowledge their wrongdoings was painful, but not unexpected. They had always thought they were entitled to everything that came from the farm, and when they failed to get it, they turned bitter. It was as if they couldn't see beyond the dollar signs to understand the depth of what they were trying to destroy. But despite their stubbornness, despite their refusal to face the consequences, the weight of their betrayal began to lift from my shoulders. I had fought back, and now it was time to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The court ruled in my favor. The forged will was deemed invalid, and the property was returned to me. The injunction held. The developer's attempts to purchase the farm had been blocked. My children's plans had crumbled. The farm was once again in my hands, where it belonged. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. The fog of betrayal and loss began to clear, and I could see the future stretching ahead of me, one that I would forge alone, but on my own terms. I stood at the edge of the orchard, the same orchard where Thomas and I had spent countless hours working side by side. The trees were blooming again, their branches heavy with the promise of fruit. The land felt alive, vibrant with possibility. This was our legacy, mine and Thomas's. And now it was my responsibility to carry it forward. The decision was clear. I wouldn't just maintain the farm, I would expand it. We had always focused on organic farming, on sustainable practices that respected the land, but there was so much more I could do. I began to make plans, looking into new ways to modernize the farm, to bring it into the future while honoring the values Thomas and I had held dear. I hired a new team to help run the farm, young people who shared my vision for sustainable agriculture. I invested in renewable energy, looking into solar panels for the barn, and researched ways to make our irrigation system more efficient. There were grants available for farmers committed to sustainable practices, and I applied for everyone I could. This farm would not just survive, it would thrive. The business, once just a small operation built on love and hard work, was now becoming something much larger, something that could continue to support the community for years to come. I wanted to create an educational program for local schools, teach the next generation about organic farming and environmental stewardship. I wanted to share the lessons Thomas and I had learned with others so that the legacy of Canton Family Orchards could extend far beyond my own lifetime. But with that expansion came a sense of freedom I hadn't expected. For the first time in a long while, I felt a peace I hadn't known since Thomas's death. I wasn't trapped in the past anymore, nor was I being pulled in different directions by my children's demands. I was free. Free to do what I wanted with my life, free to honor Thomas's memory in the way I knew was best. And in that freedom, I found a new sense of purpose. I was no longer just the widow of a man who had once been the heart of this farm. I was Anna Thomas, the woman who would carry on the work he had started, the woman who would make sure that his vision would live on, not just in the land, but in the community that depended on it. As for Ethan and Sophie, I knew I had to sever ties completely. Their lack of remorse, their willingness to betray their own parents for financial gain, it was a wound too deep to heal. I had given them every chance to make things right, but they had refused. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. The legal battle had been ugly, and it had left scars on all of us. But in the end, it was clear who had won. The farm, the legacy, the life Thomas and I had built, these things could never be bought, never be sold. They were mine, and I would protect them with everything I had. I never heard from Ethan again. I expected as much. Sophie reached out a few times, her messages full of apologies and tears, but I never responded. I had nothing left to say to her. The woman who had once been my daughter, the one I had nurtured and cared for, was gone. The woman who had replaced her was someone I didn't recognize, someone who would take everything, including the memory of their father, without a second thought. I didn't have the heart to forgive her, not after everything she had done. It was strange at first being alone. The house felt quieter without them, without the noise of their lives pressing in on mine. But soon I realized it was the silence I had been craving. It was the silence of peace, of clarity. I no longer had to tiptoe around their expectations or their guilt trips. I was free to live my life the way I saw fit. There were still moments when the pain of losing Thomas washed over me. Those moments would never go away, and I wasn't foolish enough to think they would. But they no longer controlled me. They were a part of the past, a part of what I had lost, but they didn't define who I was anymore. Now I was building something new. I had a future to look forward to, and it was one that didn't involve my children, who had shown me the depths of their selfishness. It was a future that was about honoring Thomas's legacy, about working the land with my own two hands, and about making sure that the next generation would understand the importance of what we had built. I spent my days in the orchard, walking between the rows of trees, listening to the wind rustle through the leaves and watching the fruit ripen on the branches. I had come full circle back to where it all started, and this time I wasn't going anywhere. The community rallied behind me too. The local farmers, the families who had worked for us, the neighbors who had always supported us, they all stepped forward offering their help, their encouragement. They were part of this farm's future, just as much as I was. Together we would build something that could withstand anything. And in the evenings when I sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the orchards, I felt a deep satisfaction. It wasn't just about the land anymore. It wasn't about the farm. It was about me, about the woman I had become. The woman who had stood up for what was right, who had fought for what she believed in, and who had found peace, not in revenge, but in taking control of her own life. I had done it. I had reclaimed my independence, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally living the life I was meant to live. As the days turned into weeks, I began to realize just how much I had changed. I had spent so much of my life giving nurturing and forgiving, always believing that love could heal anything, that if I just tried hard enough, I could fix things even when they were broken beyond repair. But standing in the place where Thomas and I had built our lives, I understood something deeper. Justice, not forgiveness, had given me the strength I needed to rebuild. Forgiveness, as much as I once believed in it, couldn't undo the betrayal my children had inflicted. Ethan and Sophie had shown me their true selves, and while part of me wanted to believe they could change, the reality was clear. Some wounds don't heal through kindness or letting go. Some wounds only heal by setting firm boundaries, by protecting what's yours and refusing to let others trample over your life. The farm, once a place of shared memories with Thomas, was now my sanctuary, something I would protect with everything I had. I found peace in knowing that I had done what needed to be done. I had fought for what was right, even when it meant severing ties with my own flesh and blood. And in that choice, I found a sense of independence I had never known before. The farm was thriving, not just because I had made it my priority, but because I had learned to trust myself again. I no longer sought validation from anyone. My children's betrayal had forced me to see that my worth wasn't tied to their approval or love. It was tied to my own strength, my resilience, and my ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. There were moments when I thought of them, of what could have been, but then I would remember the orchard, the fruit ripening on the trees, the future I was building, and I knew that I had made the right choice. In letting go of the past, I had found my own peace. I was free to live for myself, for the farm, and for the legacy Thomas and I had worked so hard to create. And that, in the end, was all I needed. Anna's journey is a powerful reminder that sometimes the hardest and most painful choices we make are the ones that allow us to regain control over our own lives. Her story isn't just about betrayal, it's about reclaiming her strength, her independence, and the legacy of everything she and Thomas built together. Too often we are taught that forgiveness is the ultimate path to peace. But Anna's story reveals that some wounds are too deep to be healed by forgiveness alone. True healing comes from setting boundaries, protecting what's ours, and standing firm against injustice, even when it comes from those we love the most. In today's world, we often find ourselves struggling to balance family obligations with our own well-being, especially when dealing with betrayal or manipulation. We're conditioned to put others first, to be the ones who forgive and forget. But Anna's choice shows us that sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is to walk away from toxic relationships that hold us back. Anna's transformation is a call to action to protect your peace, to reclaim your power, and to choose justice over appeasing others. It's not about revenge, but about choosing yourself, about honoring your own worth, and never allowing others to define your life for you. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to make a difficult decision about what to let go of or what to fight for, I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of Anna's journey? Do you believe that sometimes justice, not forgiveness, is the path to true peace? Leave a comment below. I look forward to reading what you think. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to check out more of my videos. You won't want to miss them.